The time has come. Our hunt for those Yoshi's eggs begins.
Yeah, exactly. It almost reminds me of Easter all over again.
Except the fact that we've already gone through Easter already, since in, I believe, by the end of March, in this year in particular, so beggars can be choosers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is I, the one and only, Ray the Flying Squirrel here,
and I'm Mighty the Armadillo here, and we are back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Super Mario Advance for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time we have basically managed able to went into World 7 by not only we did somehow collect the final 10 ace coins, which naturally speaking we somehow fully 100% everything when it comes to collecting every single ace coins.
In addition to that, we also managed to kick Wart's butt for the third time during the forms of in the Maxi Toys YouTube channel department, so as a result, yeah, it's definitely a little bit trickier compared to the forms of how it does it on the previous two versions, but that's just mainly because of screen crunch resolution. So, and in addition to that though, is about the fact that yes indeed, about the fact that we did somehow manage to get MVP for not only for Mario, but also with Luigi, Peach, and Toad, just to make things a little bit more fair, when it comes to able to actually choose different characters with each and every single level, just like the forms of how it does it what we did, not only on the NES original, but also with the forms of the Super Mario All-Stars version as well. So, either way, today for this video, if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that we're now on to the second half in terms of the forms of Super Mario Advance already. And because of that though, if you couldn't clearly tell, not only for the sake of the forms of the title screen, but it's also with the forms of the file selection screen if you couldn't tell, basically once you finish the game once, you're able to actually access to not only the extra thing, as you can see on screen, that we ended up in Yoshi Challenge, but it's also the fact that if you go back to the title screen once you finish the game once, not only if you couldn't tell about the fact that everything else about the title screen looks a bit different this time around, not only because the forms of the background of the sky actually changed color, similar to the forms of how it does it in Mario Kart Super Circuit actually, because relatively speaking is about the fact that both Super Mario Advance, alongside with the forms of Mario Kart Super Circuit, both came out in the exactly the same year, within 2001. But it's also worth noting for is that yes indeed is about the fact that one of those Yoshi's eggs actually did show up in the title screen. Mind you about the fact that it only shows us the Yoshi's egg at the moment, but as soon as you realize about the fact that, well, if you couldn't tell already, as I said before, we now ended up on the second half in terms of the forms of Super Mario Advance. So because of that though, as you can tell, we're going to be going for the exactly same levels again, except this time it's about the fact that in order to able to actually try to find every single Yoshi's eggs, because as you can tell, that we need to find 2 Yoshi eggs in each and every single level. Well, usually relatively speaking though, that's the whole entire premise of this entire challenge actually. And keep this in mind though, there was actually a catch to this challenge though, which we'll explain more about that if we continue proceeding to see forms of certain levels coming up. So because of that though, despite the fact that we have to go through the exactly same levels as before though, Mighty, that's the only thing. Yeah, exactly.
Except there are some notable differences here and there, like for instance, is about the fact that you remember these mushrooms that we keep on finding in journey forms of some subspace sections in journey forms within certain stages. That basically though is about the fact that you're normally able to actually get one of those mushrooms in joining some spots if you managed able to put the potion door onto this correct spot. So relatively speaking though, for instance, it's about the fact that we can able to easily try to get one from in here, but the one on the forms within the previous area we've already went into, and relatively speaking though, one of those mushrooms is actually being replaced by one of those Yoshi's eggs. So because of that though, yeah, that's essentially how this particular mode actually plays out to be. But if you really want to be up for the challenge though, well, good luck with this, because as far as I'm aware, this is by far the hardest challenge I've ever experienced in this game so far, because mind you, whenever we managed to experience this on the original cartridge version, my goodness, I was literally so close to able to finish up everything for the sake of the forms of this whole entire game. But that's just mainly because no matter what though, I forgot to save, that's the only thing. And luckily for us though, is about the fact that it's all genuine cartridge rather than just the actual rubbish bootleg copy. So that's relatively a good thing in my part, but either way, I believe something tells me one of those Yoshi's eggs is actually on this spot, right there. So relatively speaking though, is about the fact that each and every single world does manage able to contain like 6 eggs in total, at least specifically in World 1 all the way up to World 6. And the only exception being is of course World 7. Well, that's just mainly because, as you probably already expect, World 7 is by far the shortest world in the game. Well, that's just mainly because it only contains 2 stages, as you probably already expect. So anyway, a few things we want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 18th of May today, in some cases in 2024 today. And relatively speaking though, there are tons of stuff we would like to able to point things out, potentially speaking though, is that first of all, I'm pretty sure about the fact that, relatively speaking though, until tomorrow, that Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is actually going to be celebrating its 25th anniversary tomorrow, which, sure enough though, we'll mention more about that if we get onto tomorrow's video for sure. Yeah, exactly. After realizing about the fact that after looking back on it though, it might be felt a bit mixed bag for some audiences out there, for what I've heard anyway, and also because it did somehow introduce to ourselves the most annoying characters in the entire Star Wars community, as the forms of, well, spoiler alert, Jar Jars. So because of that though, despite it was actually one of the most comic relief kind of characters, but I don't know. But then again though, we'll talk more about that until tomorrow either way. So anyway, let's get to the point about the fact that no matter what though, when it comes to Yoshi Challenge in general, here's the catch to this though, as far as I'm aware, that if you do die at one point, if you do manage to able to collect certain Yoshi's eggs for that matter, what happens was though, if you dare die at one point, you lose all of your Yoshi's eggs. So meaning about the fact that, well, assuming of course about the fact that the checkpoints will be active quite frequently, if you manage to able to go into one of those rooms to the other, and as far as I'm aware, that basically though is about the fact you have to backtrack all over again, and hopefully you should able to actually try your another attempt to able to try to get that particular Yoshi's egg back. And relatively speaking though, to me though, this is a bit of a tricky task, especially concerning for the fact that, well, obviously about the fact that no matter what though, as you can tell, despite the fact that every once in a while though we will come across into the exactly the same ace coins placements here and there, but relatively speaking though, we've already collected them since Enjoying Forms have been the main run-through of the game so far. So naturally, we don't have to worry about recollecting those specific ace coins again, because obviously we've already accomplished that, you know? Yeah, something very similar to the forms of how it does it for advanced coins in the forms of in Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, specifically World E, and on top of that with star coins, as well as the forms of star medals, as well as the forms of green stars in specifically in 3D World, and not to mention though with the forms of 10 flower coins in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So because of that though, oh jeez, that was a definition of a close call, especially concerning for the fact that, again, if I do get hit by that particular ninja from earlier ago, obviously though, I will lose my Yoshi's eggs. So because of that though, this is going to be a bit of a perfect challenge kind of syndrome or something, because normally in the forms of in the ace coins, you can thankfully keep them, but as far as Yoshi's eggs, as far as I'm concerned, you have to be absolute perfection when it comes to able to participating in this challenge. So because of that though, hopefully we'll try our best if we're able to actually just try to go for a best run if possible. So either way, and I know for a fact that for one noticeable thing in mind, it's been about 6 days ago since we've last played this game for sure, because as far as I'm concerned, that Sonic, he's almost finishing up everything for Sonic Rush, so as a result he should be able to finish that game up at some point in just about a day after the game's release of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. And straight to the point, we've only got about 5 more days to go now until that particular remake is definitely coming. So because of that though, still we are basically excited for it still, and relatively speaking now, I'm just really looking forward to it though. But anyways, let's move on now to World 1-3, and relatively speaking now, we can able to collect the last 2 Yoshi's eggs in Journey forms at this level. So because of that though, and straight to the point is about the fact that if we go on to certain bosses, obviously though, that'll be a true definition of the final time to able to actually deal with certain bosses. There's only one exception to that, however though, that's what appears to be Mouser so far. That is mainly because in this version of the game in particular, that you only fight Mouser twice, in Journey forms of not only in World 1, but also in World 6, whilst unlike in, you know what I'm talking about, with the NES version, alongside with the Super Nintendo counterparts on the Super Mario All-Stars version, that basically you come across to Mouser for not only for World 1, but also with World 3, so... yeah, because as far as I'm aware, if we get on to World 2, that'll be a true definition of the final time to able to actually encounter Tri-Clyde, and as far as World 3 is concerned, that'll be the final time to able to face off against with Robobodo, and on top of that, same applies with the forms of World 4 for the sake of Fry Guy, and as far as World 5, it'll be Claw Grip, and of course World 7 for Wart, until eventually before when Wart eventually comes back, technically for the sake of the forms of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake for the Nintendo Switch. So because of that though, now as far as I'm usually concerned with the forms of what has been happening recently, well, as far as I can gather correctly, that recently speaking though, is that I've noticed about the fact that in Journey forms of certain summer events has been going on, and I was a little bit too lower for able to actually get that mushroom over there. Oh well, no big deal, but at least we're still able to stick around with just only 2 hearts, I guess, so oh well. Besides, that World 1 is gonna be relatively easy, so eventually at some point in World 2-2 and onwards, it'll get a lot more difficult as far as progression goes. Well, in regards to the forms of Yoshi challenge, dare I say. So either way, yeah, as I was saying about the fact that we're able to actually access to certain summer events has been coming up at some point in next month, which, as far as I'm aware, so far we've actually got some confirmed dates for certain events coming up. Like, for instance, Summer Game Fest is going to be still starts until the 7th of June, and that could be also applies for Day of the Devs, which stands for developers. And on top of that, Accessibility Showcase also takes place in June the 7th. And meanwhile, in Journey Forms of the 8th of June, that we were able to actually have 2 events, which we have Wholesome Direct and Future Games Showcase. So yeah, that's as far as we can able to say about it. I'm just still very curious to know what specific games they're able to actually bring us into for the sake of the forms of these upcoming events, including Nintendo Direct as well. Although despite the fact that we still have no idea what specific day will eventually try to able to make its release. So either way though, I suppose we'll have to find out. So either way. And speaking of which though, is that on the 9th of June, I believe they're about to be receiving 2 events as well, and both entirely related to Xbox, which we have Xbox Games Showcase, pretty obvious standard stuff, and on top of that, Xbox Mystery Showcase. Oh, that should be interesting. And as far as the 10th of June is concerned, we've already did somehow manage to address that Ubisoft Forward is going to be taking place. So because of that though, because I do remember ever since in last year, that my goodness, in Ubisoft Forward, we are basically excited for not only for DLC 2, for the sake of Mario Plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, but also with the teaser footage of the forms of Rayman in the Phantom Show for the sake of DLC 3 for Mario Plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. And my goodness, while looking back on it though, it still looks really surprisingly good for the sake of the forms of try looking back on specific things. Oh, did you know, Mighty, is about the fact that it's been like almost 20 years ago since that The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess has been revealed back in Journey forms of in E3 2004, while usually relatively speaking, despite when the Nintendo GameCube was still around, and it wasn't until likely 2 years later that we get ourselves a cross release. So as a result, we're able to actually have not only the GameCube version, which at this point in time for today's economy is really
really darn expensive on the GameCube version, but as far as I'm aware, unlike the Wii version, it costs less compared to the forms of how it does it on the GameCube version, because obviously it was part of the Wii's earliest lifespan, at least as far as I'm concerned. But either way, so as you can see, since we actually did collect all 6 of those Yoshi eggs right here, those eggs has been hatched, and as a result, we can able to see this very generous celebration right there, which as a result, those sprites of Yoshi's are entirely based off from Super Mario World, believe it or not. So, despite the fact that, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that we've already seen some familiar colors for Yoshi's, for the likes of in Super Mario World in some cases though, like we see green, red, blue, and yellow in journey forms of in Super Mario World. There's only 2 color exceptions to this, however, though, and that's what appears to be pink and light blue. So because of that, though, yeah, pretty cool to see the forms of how Yoshi's did somehow make its brief appearance in journey forms of this version of the game in particular. So either way, and of course, as you probably already expect, similar to the forms of how it does it on the main run-through of the game, obviously though is about the fact that we'll have to go through 2 worlds per video, just in case no matter what though, the actual length of the actual specific videos like this, it goes by a little bit more lengthier as far as this is concerned. So yeah, anyway, and relatively speaking, I was about the fact that there was technically 2 upcoming events, which it hasn't been confirmed for its final release date just yet, and those are, as I mentioned this before, Nintendo Direct in June, and finally, PC Gaming Show, which we still have no idea when those dates are going to be up, but truth be told, though, is about the fact that, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens, and during at some point in next month. So either way, oh, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that recently, during the informs have been a couple of days ago actually, that recently Gundam Breaker 4 has recently confirmed the actual release date, and as far as I'm aware, the game itself is going to release until 29th of August. So yeah, that's pretty swell, I guess. I mean, nothing right to hum about, I guess, but either way, we did indeed have the actual final confirmation about that particular release date for that game now, so yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. And it's also worth noting for is about the fact that according to Nintendo of Japan, that Nintendo Museum is going to be opening and during at some point in this fall, specifically this year. It could be either be on September, October, or November. It's pretty tricky to tell, but then again, though, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So, and also, something's worth noting for is about the fact that I've noticed that Shin Megami Tensei 5, as well as the bunch of DLC, that for some reason is that those specific stuff relates to the forms of Shin Megami Tensei 5 is going to be delisted for the Nintendo Switch eShop until specifically in June. I'm guessing it's probably because the Vengeance version might have something to do with it. So, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, yeah, it's kind of weird, honestly, if we're able to actually just to realize they're about to be delisted, not only the game itself on the digital version, but as well as the forms of the digital deluxe edition, and on top of that, they're also going to be delisting the downloadable content bundle, as well as the return of the True Demon, and a Goddess in Training, the Rage of a Queen, the Doctor's Last Wish, and May Tamia Dance of Ralph, I think is what it says anyway, and as well as the forms of May Tama Dance of Miracles, and Mentama Dance of XP, or specifically Experience, and finally Safety Difficulty. So because of that though, yeah, it's going to be quite a lot of stuff is about to be delisted, so it kind of reminds me of like a similar situation as the forms of, you know, with the forms of Super Monkey Ball, Banana Mania, when it comes to the forms of DLC characters right now. I mean, relatively speaking though, the good news is about the fact that we still got Hello Kitty after all, specifically on the Switch version most likely. That's is mainly because I always attempt able to play that game on a go, so just in case I can able to actually just you know, trying to complete certain mission objectives, despite some of them are actually kind of easy, and some of them are brutally difficult. And don't even get me started on certain mission objectives for the majority of the party games basically, because obviously though, with the actual physics or momentum doesn't seem to work out all that well. So yeah, you probably get the idea what I was expecting to say about this, I guess. So anyway,
Speaking of which though, is about the fact that for I've noticing this as well, about the fact that I just noticed there is actually going to be, truth be told, that do you guys even remember about the fact that we did somehow predict that there's going to be an animated short coming up, based off for the sake of the forms of the upcoming Sonic game eventually? Well, as it turns out, we have predicted it correctly, because as far as I'm aware, recently we've actually got ourselves a brief image for the sake of this upcoming animated short, for the sake of the forms of just before the release of this specific game, which appears to be none other than Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. And because of that though, it's gonna be Sonic Cross Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings. So it's mainly gonna be focusing on Shadow's perspective, and on top of that, for what I've heard anyway, they're gonna be able to bring back Maria. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell, and I'm really looking forward to see how that particular animated short is gonna be brings out to be. And as far as I'm aware, they only gonna be able to actually do some explanation to know about the forms of the Animate Expo panel all around Shadow in the upcoming animation of, you know, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings, and doing at some point on 6th of July in Saturday. So, well, mind you, it's gonna be like a teaser of any sort rather than just a full animate kind of shorts to it though, which as a result they only go show us a teaser just before the game actually comes out. Like, we still have no idea what the release date is going to be confirmed yet though, but then again we'll have to wait and see what happens. Maybe they'll try to mention about it during at some point in the forms of in Summer Game Fest or something. Well, just like the forms of how it does it, what they did in Sonic Superstars back in last year. So because of that though, and I honestly have no idea that star just somehow doesn't show up. Yeah, I haven't got a single clue of why that star refused to show up, but oh well, we'll have to able to stick around with it, I guess. So either way, let's use the potion right onto this spot, and able to actually get the next Yoshi's egg as such. So either way, so yeah, everything else checks out there, but it wasn't until in certain other worlds, specifically World 5 and onwards though, it gets ridiculously difficult sometimes, especially noticeable because, well, relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that you have to be really need to able to do a lot of, like, you know, exploration sometimes, because thankfully though there's no time limit in this game, so as a result you don't have to worry about rushing yourself. So unlike the forms of how it does it in let's just say in Super Mario Advance 2 Super Mario World, alongside with the forms of Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros 3 sometimes, specifically in World E, that's basically though some stages you have to rush this, because obviously though in one of those stages you cannot afford to stop once. So either way, and it's also worth noting for is that digging up a lot of sand blocks is going to be really irritating in this stage, but that's just mainly because we really expect able to actually bring Toad back, but we've already technically played as him during the forms of in World 2-1, but oh well, beggars can't be choosers, you know. So either way, now we can able to take on Red Bodo again. So I wonder if it's possible we can able to actually just to, like, well, trying to able to toss this giant ninja right at Red Bodo, and for whatever reason I just keep on getting hit sometimes, which as a result, mind you, again, it's been about 6 days ago since we've last played this, but either way. And also something's worth noting for as far as what oh jeez Louise, I totally forgot about those fireballs. Alright, so hopefully she'll be out. Oh, come on! Okay. Alright, there we go. Oh jeez, that was a close call. Yeah, especially noticeable that if you get screwed up right there, then obviously though you have to recollect those Yoshi's eggs again. So, yeah, because otherwise though, it's gonna be quite an interesting experience, all things considered. And also, keep this in mind though, since that we're probably going to be ignoring collecting those coins from now on, for the sake of the forms of slot machines now, well, that's just mainly because every time whenever you do manage to complete the stage, assuming if, of course, if you do need to pick up the Yoshi egg, then obviously that is about the fact that the actual transition that somehow takes you back to the forms of Yoshi challenge rather than just the actual slot machine, not able to farm some more extra lives. So because of that though, I'm sure it's still possible you can technically still get some extra lives in some scenarios, ranging from, you know what I mean, with the forms of certain grass we need to pull out, and on top of all that stuff though, when it comes to recollecting those advanced coins. But
as you can tell, we've already got plentiful of extra lives at this point. So, and as far as I'm aware, is that the maximum amount of lives you can only reach up to in this game, alongside with the forms of, well, let's just say in this game in particular, that the maximum you can only get up to is 99. Whilst unlike the forms of how it does it in, I would say, in Super Mario Advance 2, Super Mario World, alongside with the forms of maybe Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, you can able to actually max out your lives counter up to 999 lives as far as you can probably try to achieve it.
Well, mind you, Ray, we haven't exactly accomplished that when it comes to not only in Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, but also at the forms of, you know, Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2. But that's just mainly because at this point in time, that we are still about to be preparing to able to actually get ready to able to be playing through Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on the Nintendo Switch as a remake, you know? Yeah, exactly. So either way, though, and as far as I'm concerned about the fact that there's one other aspect, I suppose, that Tiana, or Sonic for that matter, both have completely forgotten to mention about that in Journey forms of it not only in Sonic Rush, but also with Princess Peach Showtime respectively, and as a result, recently, Minecraft has turned 15 this year, so because of that though, well, better late than never I suppose, and that's what appears to be, yes indeed, happy 15th anniversary of the game's release of Minecraft, and as a result, while looking back on it though, my goodness, it looks a lot different compared to what it does now. I mean, relatively speaking though, every nowadays we're about to be able to be receiving a bunch of collaborations with certain franchises ranging from Sonic the Hedgehog, Super Mario, alongside with the forms of SpongeBob SquarePants, Kung Fu Panda, and a whole bunch of collaborations we can probably think about on top of our heads. Well, mind you about the fact that I haven't exactly experienced that much of Minecraft, but I do know it's actually very popular, especially noticeable thanks to the forms of, you know, one of those fighters was actually included in Journey Forms of in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, in Journey Forms of Fighters Pass 2, and as a result, it is so cool to see not only Steve, but also with Alex, and also with Enderman, and I believe Zombie as well, I guess? So, mind you about the fact that it's been about quite a few days since we've last played Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but that's just mainly because then again, we are super duper excited able to actually just, you know, going on to Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch remake until that game decides to release. So anyway, and as far as other things I would like to point out, there is technically one last thing I want to mention about, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, from what I can tell, that the first SpongeBob movie, specifically the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, apparently though, is going to be receiving a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray limited steelbook until specifically on the 16th of July. So because of that though, specifically in this year, well, that's mainly because no matter what though, that film is going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. So makes sense to able to actually get that film to be released on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, enjoying at some point in the forms of it, as you mentioned this earlier, the 16th of July in this year. So yeah, it makes sense. So, and as far as I'm aware, the actual content they somehow include, well, not only does it contain the Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, but also with the forms of, I would say, the regular Blu-ray disc as far as I'm aware, and also with this very, very cool steelbook which actually replicates the forms of the front cover, not only for the VHS, but also with the forms of the DVD cover as well. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting, and also with the paddy wagon that both SpongeBob and Patrick are the only ones they can able to drive on, and on the right side of the actual inside of the steelbook, that you see not only jellyfishes, but also with Squidward as well. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So either way, although it's kind of unfortunate about the fact that I think it was only exclusive to America, I'm pretty sure. So, oh well, beggars can't be choosers as far as you might able to expect. So, Anyways, with that being said, World 2 is completely done for good. So with that being said, folks, is that we get endings up this point right here. So join us tomorrow for more of Let's Play of Super Mario Band. Is that we're about to continue experiencing the Yoshi challenge, except the fact that this time we'll jump right into not only for World 3, but also with World 4 as well. So because of that though, yeah, this is gonna be an interesting experience. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.